Welcome back to Coach Blake's breakdowns as we go through how my shadow team's coming along, what a shadow team is, and everything involved, whether it's the draft, for like scouting, different prospects, team building. Just get into all of it here. But let's recap week 11 and the movers and shakers on my team so far this season. It's been fun. There's been a little, jockeying for position on the depth chart. There's been some guys that are starting to get some more run as the season goes, especially after we passed the trade deadline and some teams are settling in and realizing what they have and giving some guys a shot. So let's get into it. Week 11, let's go through. Bijan Robinson still kicking butt. Obviously still need a quarterback. Don't need to talk about that every single week. I'm aware. But yeah, Bijan Robinson still killing it with the 90 grade. Looks like he's going to get upgraded to elite if he keeps his pace through the next few weeks as far as his tier. Just again, a really solid player to have on the team. Really glad that first round pick worked out. Jackson Smith-Njigba, another great week. Malik Neighbors, and bye week last week, still looking good. Still glad to have him as my wide receiver 2. Looking forward to potentially bumping him up to wide receiver 1. Obviously, the reason he isn't is just the snap counts. He has less snaps than Jackson Smith-Njigba on the year, so he's just going to slide into that wide receiver 2 spot. But a great 1-2 punch, 2 first rounders that have been working out. The battle for wide receiver 3 between Troy Franklin and Jalen Coker. Coker, obviously, with the bye last week, didn't add to his snap count, so Troy Franklin has kept the lead. But as you can see, they're battling out, averaging 21 and 20 snaps, as you can see to the side over here to the right per week. And that's how we're, evaluating guys as far as if they're contributors, if they're able to, score in the shadow team league that I'm a part of. Receivers need 30 snaps to be considered a starter, get that full score every week. But when you're 20 plus snaps, I believe as a receiver, you're going to be able to earn rotational scoring privileges. And so as you can see, I mean, they're both hitting that 20 snap per week threshold. Would like to see him get some more, but totally fine with that as they're also my wide receiver 3. So that's totally fine. Second round pick, UDFA, Jalen Coker, obviously grading out better with similar snap counts. So he'll probably get elevated to wide receiver 3 if he can keep this up just throughout the end of the year coming into next year. Something to keep an eye on. And then, we finally got Brendan Rice snaps this week. You got a whole 3 snaps in prime time. Good to see Brendan Rice figuring it out. Finding a role in that offense is going to be hard to earn snaps in that room, but hopefully he's able to over time. Tucker Kraft still a great tight end, solid tight end that I can have out of the third round. Dallin Holkright just underwhelming so far this year. I wish he was getting more usage down there in New Orleans. But Tucker Kraft's fine and got a solid tight end class coming up. Maybe try and grab one this coming draft cycle. Bo Limmer almost pushing for 50 snaps per week. Solid starter. Had that week off where they let Jackson get back after it at the center spot in LA, but Bo Limmer seems to be the guy for the Rams, should be the guy for the Rams coming down the line. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, talk a little bit about last week, but he has hit that 60 plus PFF grade threshold. So he is going to have a factor as far as draft priority, looking at interior offensive linemen into this next draft cycle. Warren McClendon also got the start this week. He's up to 200 snaps on the season, averaging 18 per week, needing to get to that 30 snap range to really be a solid guy that I can consider a starter and get a tier grade with everybody else involved here. But, he's looked decent. Obviously, that 50 grade is not great, but better than nothing. We'll see if he's able to get more snaps down the back half of the season and see what that average ends up being at the end of the year. But those are kind of the 2 guys that were really looking at doing anything on our offensive line so far. Jalen Duncan not really getting much run at all. Same with Frank Crum. Chandler Zavala has been in and out, but the Panthers did a lot to overhaul their interior offensive line this offseason. So he just kind of got bumped to the bench. But I do expect him to get more run as he gets later into his career. I don't think he's bad enough to get the boot and get kicked off the team, get cut or waived or what have you. But he's just not going to get a lot of run this season. And then Luke Whippler is a guy that I really like coming out, and I really hope that he's able to get run with the Browns moving forward. But again, just a kind of a deeper O-line room that's hard to really break into, especially early on in your career. But that's where we're at with the offensive line. Let's slide over to the defense. Thule, I thought he had a really great performance in prime time against the Bengals, but he just didn't get the PFF grade that I expected him to get. But he is still at a 65, so Can't complain there. A lot of snaps. Let's see if we can slide over so we can get a little peek at the weekly averages, as he is the only defensive lineman getting starter level snaps. Adetomowa Adebawore, you still 134 snaps, not bad. Need more snaps. 12 a week is not going to cut it. But I have a lot of these defensive, like interior guys that are just really, it feels like they're just role players. They're going to be involved a lot more certain weeks than others, but none of them really getting more than 20 snaps a week, which is just tough. We're trying to build this team out for the long term. Having a bunch of rotational guys isn't going to get it done. But I do want to talk about Austin Booker, who is really starting to move along in the process. He's up to 16.6 per week. Just, again, shooting kind of that first benchmark is that 20 snaps a week kind of bar to entry as far as being considered a rotational guy in any scheme, any team. He's 16.6, so we're working up there. It's good to see him getting a lot more run as of late. Like I talked about a couple weeks ago, he's really ramping up in the back half of the season, so I'm excited to see how he finishes out the year in Chicago. Disa Isaac still not getting a lot of run. Jalen Redmond still not getting a ton of run. Him and Evan Anderson still battling for that, nose tackle role on the team. But just neither of them really getting a lot of action. But both grading out fine. I mean, Jalen Redmond's up at an 80. If he could just get more run, I'd be interested to see if that number holds. Evan Anderson down to a 72, just short of a 73, but that's still a great grade, especially for a rotational guy getting in there and getting those quality snaps. Hopefully that's able to earn him more run. And then Disa Isaac, only 18 snaps, but just shy of a 74 PFF grade. That feels really good. He's getting quality reps again when he gets in there, just not getting in there enough to really be a solid contributor yet. But those are three guys that I really do have faith for moving forward. Would like to see them get more run, see what we can do as far as defensive interior, not have to worry about it all the time, bringing in someone to really be a contributor for the defensive interior for my team. And then obviously Disa Isaac being an edge guy that can start hopefully pushing Austin Booker at some point, but we'll see how that all goes. But defensive line room is very interesting because we have guys that are getting quality snaps when they get in and are able to get reps. They're just not getting the run that you'd like to see them get, or I'd like to see them get. As you can see, kind of the only guys that we're looking at as far as being solid contributors are Tuli Tuipulotu with his 42 snaps a week, Adetomowa Adebawore with 12.2, and then Austin Booker pushing now at 16.6. So those are the guys really pushing or already there as far as being able to be solid contributors over the long term, guys that I can consider, keeping on the team for the long term, not having to look to replace every single year. Down to the linebackers, Ivan Pace is back in action, 32 snaps per week, still feels really good. I don't love that the grade's dropping. I like to see him get that up by the end of the year so he can at least return to where he was last year. Don't really love the fall off that he's been going on so far, but it is what it is. Not too big of a drop theoretically as far as tiers go, just a tier down in his second season. Again, I drafted him in the 6th round. He was an undrafted free agent, so still great production out of him. Being a guy that I can count on for snaps every week is always good, especially out of a guy at day 3 or UDFA. Peyton Wilson, round 3 guy, rookie, pushing for that 70 PFF grade, getting those no snap counts back up. I know he's, like I've talked about, he's been very inconsistent. Some weeks he's in the teens, some weeks he's getting starting level snaps. So kind of the Steelers just trying to figure out what they want to do with him. Watching the game this week, he was very hit or miss as far as packages go. He's not a full-time starter, obviously, by the snap counts we can see, but they are getting him involved a lot more. I think he could be an every down type of linebacker, and I hope that he is at some point, especially next year in the second year of his career. But that's 70, almost 70 PFF grade feels really good. And we just got to get those snaps a little higher. Just got to get a few more snaps a week averaging. So if we can get a couple more weeks of starting level snap counts, then that honestly should put him over that 30 mark. But we'll see how that goes. It might take him a little longer just because of the volume that he has into the season already, and how deep we are into the season. But, really looking forward to him. It looks really good. I'm excited to have him part of the squad. I think Ivan Pace and Peyton Wilson are a great duo of linebackers to have, especially being as young as they are. Being my second year doing a shout-out team, I feel good about my linebacker room. But down to the defensive back, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell still holding it down, doing great things up in Philadelphia right now. Obviously, both over 70s. Cooper DeJean pushing for that 80 grade. I think Quinyon's the better cornerback personally, playing on the perimeter and locking guys down week after week. PFF doesn't see it quite the same, but he still has a great grade, especially as a rookie. So first round, second round picks right there, doing good things, both getting starter level snaps. I'd like to see Cooper DeJean closer to 30 or over 30. but I think he'll get there over the next few weeks as he has been a lot more involved. It was just kind of a slow start for him at the beginning of the season. Didn't really get any run if like at all the first few weeks of the year, but as they've kind of come into their own and he's found a place and worked his way into snaps, he's been hard to pull off the field. So it's always good to see from both of those rookies. Holding it down in the DB room. Cam Smith would like to see more production, honestly, out of him, not really pushing for more snaps when he's not performing well. I can understand why he's not getting the run that we'd like to see with that 36th grade. So, had higher hopes for him being a second round pick, but, not opposed to looking at more DBs. I actually finally started getting into watching some of the defensive backs in this upcoming draft class. And I'm excited about some of the talent coming out. So not opposed to adding more guys to that room. Hopefully non-Eagles so they can find a way to not take snaps from each other and, cannibalize the room. But yeah, DB room still feels good. Again, year 2, and I have 2 rookies that feel like they're going to be pretty solid staples in the league for a while. So always good to have that I can lean back on. But the defense is coming together. I mean, I only have 5 guys that are really pushing those benchmarks for that starting level kind of player that's able to, I can feel confident just leaving on the team, not having to worry about replacing. Whether that's grade wise or snap count wise, they're all 5 of these guys are pretty much doing that, except for Antonio Johnson, who, though he has 515 snaps, has 46.8 snaps per week, has that 44 PFF grade, which is really tough. And I'm really just holding on to hope that he's just a good player in a bad situation. And if he's able to find his way onto another team some way or another, or they're able to put more talent around him, that grade's going to go up. It's hard to hold it down in Jacksonville if they're not having a great year. We're all aware of that. So hoping to see him kind of step it up going into year 3 next year. But maybe after the next couple seasons, he finds a new home where he's able to be a really solid contributor and is able to get that production back up. So Brandon Joseph, 15 per week, not great. It's kind of half of what we're looking for, obviously, but I do still feel good about what he's done. I know 51 grade doesn't feel great, but he's kind of an intermittent player, and it's hard to get in a rhythm when you're just kind of randomly getting thrown out there, especially at some of these positions where they are more rhythm positions, getting a feel for the game and your opponent live. Jaden Hicks, slowly working up the snap count. We can see the grades there, the 71.7 grade over 66 snaps. That feels good. 6 snaps a week does not feel good, but again, with the Chiefs room, it's just kind of hard to find the field, especially for a younger guy. So as a rookie with that 71 grade over 60 plus snaps on the year so far, can't complain there. Again, just another guy we're hoping to kind of carve out a role and find his way onto the field a little bit more over time. But again, feel really good about this defense, have some pretty solid players that I can feel confident in over the longer term in Tuipulotu and Ivan Pace. And hopefully by the end of the season, a guy like Peyton Wilson, and then Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean feel really good about for the long term for now. I mean, it's obviously only year 1, but feel really good about what they've been doing this year. Then just kind of the safety rooms, you got to figure it out a little bit, but that's all right. I mean, 3 out of 4 position groups, that's totally fine by me. And then back to this offense, obviously, you got a lot of work to do. Don't have a quarterback. Running back feels solid. Don't need more than 1 running back. It'd be nice to get a second guy in there that, could maybe push for some snaps in his own right, but not opposed to having Bijan Robinson being the bell cow for this team right now. JSN and Malik Neighbors, really solid receivers to have at that 1 and 2 spot. And then I've been very pleasantly surprised by Jalen Coker this year, really trying to earn a spot on the squad as the wide receiver 3. Troy Franklin, another rookie, again, more highly coveted rookie, earlier pick. Hopefully he's able to do some more down the back end of this year now that Bo Nix is starting to heat up, but we'll see how everything goes. Tucker Kraft, feel good about tight end room, not opposed to, improving it, but I'm more focused on the offensive line and quarterback situation for this offense. But overall, team's coming together nicely. It's done better than I ever expected it to do coming in. So year 2, can't complain right now. But let's talk about some draft stuff. So obviously we updated our draft needs. Like I talked about with Bo Limmer, hitting the snap threshold and the PFF grade threshold now counts as a quality player for the stage that my team's at right now. So that the interior offensive line priority dropped quite a ways. If everyone remembers, it was I think it was a top 5 priority last week, and now it's all the way down there to 8. But yeah, looking at nothing that we haven't talked about, right? The quarterback need, obviously, number 1, high value player, high value position with just 0 contribution right now. So that's going to be priority 1. Defensive interior, another high value position. And we talked about that a little bit, where there's guys that are performing well, but they're just not getting those snaps. We got to look for more of an every down type defensive interior lineman interior defensive linemen out of this next draft cycle. That's why I'm really eyeing a guy like, if I'm able to get a guy like a Mason Graham that I can feel like can be an every down player, or even a guy like a Kenneth Grant right now that I just feel like isn't really specialized to anything, is a well-rounded player. Not necessarily a great player, but he's going to be out there, get those snaps, and be a guy that we can lean on and be a steady presence for the defensive interior. That's kind of what I'm going to start looking at for as far as what is going to be good to bring into the squad and contribute in that room. And then offensive line, obviously, you need interior dropped a little bit, like we talked about, but offensive tackle, not really getting anything out of anybody in that position right now. And that's a higher value position, as we all know. You have the quarterback, and then a couple priorities down, you're going to have the offensive tackle who's protecting him. So, going to need someone to contribute there. And I don't love this offensive tackle class. So wouldn't be surprised if we don't really make many moves there and doesn't work out this cycle, but we look more into the following year to really bolster the offensive line, especially the tackle position. And as you can see, we do have 20% of our edges are considered quality players, but that being a higher value position, we're going to want to bring in some more talent there. That's why it's still bumped up quite a ways. Because it's low quality, but it has that high value. As you can see, everything under it outside of wide receiver is lower value and quite significantly for the most part. But then wide receiver is only below it just because we have more quality guys at that spot. So I'm not opposed to bringing in an edge rusher. This is a fun D-line class overall. So having needs at defensive interior and edge rusher, I don't really feel too terrible about that. I'm kind of excited to probably be a little trench heavy on the defensive side this year, but really try and turn over that room and get some nice quality guys in. And then safeties bumped up there. We talked about the safety room. Antonio Johnson's doing fine. He's getting snaps. He's scoring in the league, but he's not great, and he's not good enough to earn the quality player mark. As we talked about, that's getting the snap minimum for his position to qualify as a starter and having that 60 plus PFF grade. He's doing one of those things, but he is not a 60 plus PFF guy. That's why we have 0 quality safeties. But there are some guys that I really like in this class. Like I talked about, I kind of started watching the DBs this week, and there's some guys that I really like in this class already, whether at corner or defensive or safety. So obviously don't really need corners, but that's only a couple spots down on the priority list, but do need a safety. And I have a couple guys in mind that I'd like to try and grab. One of them is very high, I think, right now, as the board stands, and we'll look at that a little bit later. Not necessarily the board, not releasing the board yet, but we'll look at kind of the positions that I have covered so far, number of players that I have there, and how they're grading out for me so far. But I think right now I have a safety in the top 5 on my big board overall. So I'm not opposed to grabbing that guy at all early on. He's kind of looking based on where safeties normally go, where they slide. I probably wouldn't pick him with my first round pick, but if he's there in the back end of the first round, I'm not opposed to grabbing him at all. I'm trying to stick with the BPA strategy, though. So if he's the best guy available, which I don't think he will be based on my board right now, I don't think he will be the top player available. But if he is, then I'm not opposed to grabbing him early and just letting it ride. Get good football players and let good football players be good football players on your football team. So not opposed to that at all. But there's the rest of the quality on the board so far. Obviously, the positions in mind that have just those zeros, quarterback, defensive interior, offensive tackle, safety. We just need guys in those position groups. We need guys in those rooms that are going to be able to contribute. Obviously, interior offensive line is the lowest next, and edge. We're not opposed to adding either of those positions. I do like this interior offensive line class. I've heard a lot of people talk about how it's a little shallower and a lot of great talent there. But with, I think, the tackles that are going to end up converting into interior offensive line, and with the just normal like guys like Tyler Booker, Donovan Jackson, Tate Ratledge, I just think overall there's a lot of great players that I can grab that can contribute in that interior offensive line room in this class. So I'm definitely going to be looking to make a move there this year. So defensive interior, offensive interior lines, and then edge rusher, but then obviously looking at, again, maybe not a tackle. That might stay a 0 for next year just because I don't love the talent that's coming out. Maybe get a late round guy that ends up being a star. I know there's a guy right now in Josh Simmons that had an injury that I'm hoping slides down boards a little bit that I'm able to grab. I don't really want to grab him too early, but he is high on my board. So, again, just like safety, if he ends up being that first pick, then he's that first pick. He's a guy I'm willing to ride with, but I would be interested to see if he gets bumped inside of the NFL level. And then this quarterback class, I'm just not impressed by it too much. And a lot of the guys that I do like the most in this class, I expect to go back, or I hope go back, just because I think another year of playing at that college level and developing a little further would do them a lot of good down the road. But then just real quick, let's talk about what I have going on as far as I got my big board up to 80 players now as of today. Here we go. So this is what we're looking at right now is just the positions that I have listed, obviously right through here: quarterback, receiver, edge, defensive interior, corner, offensive tackle, linebacker, running back. I do separate guards and centers as far as my evaluation process goes, just to keep it a little cleaner and get more depth at both positions. I don't like getting a bunch of interior offensive linemen, but only having like 2 or 3 centers. I want to make sure I keep myself pretty even. And safety, tight end, and then we're not really scouting specialists at this point. Not looking to add specialists to the shadow team. Not going to scout them too heavily. We took that punter last year, and I'm already upset. I'm still upset about it, so we're just not going to focus on it right now. But then we have the number of players that I have evaluated each of those positions. It obviously totals up to 80, like I said. So we do have a top 75. I don't feel like it's an accurate top 75. I still have some players I like to get through that'll probably be in that category, in that group. But yeah, so far 80 players. We have 13 offensive tackles that we have graded. I actually watched another one this morning. We have 10 wide receivers, 12 edge players, 10 defensive interior players. And so that 22 defensive linemen, obviously, I'm going to put a lot of time into looking at that position. I really would do want to turn over that room. We have 9 interior offensive linemen, 6 guards, and 3 centers. Just need to get deeper into the class. Haven't gotten too deep. A lot of people are saying they don't really love it, so I just haven't prioritized a lot of those players yet. Kind of the top end guys that I've seen, talked about a little bit, I've walked through, but nothing too crazy. And then in the next column over, we have average grade, and that's based on my grading system, which you can kind of see. You can see my scale right next to it. This is the average grade for all those players at that position. So out of the 13 offensive tackles, this is what the average grade of the class is, you could say. And then kind of compare that to this board over here. So a 3.97 falls into just shy of a developmental prospect, but just kind of a backup depth player. I don't think the tackle class is deep, or I don't think it's very top heavy either. Don't really love a lot of the talent. I think there's a lot of good day 2 talent in it that you can kind of have some flex players. And like I talked about, there's a lot of tackles in this class that I feel are going to get moved to the interior, or they're just going to be very average to below average tackles in the league. So that average grade really lines up with how I feel about it. But this is just a good way to kind of see which positions I feel good about, don't feel good about, which maybe might be deeper. Maybe it's just a top heavy class and it falls off a lot and that pulls the grade up. But that's where, as we get more volume into some of these positions, as we get closer to that 300 mark that I'm shooting for this year, should be able to see some of these positions really average out and see what's going on. But yeah, I think as of now, and then I have them ranked in the next column over. But as you can see, the safety class, I only have 3 players graded so far, but it's obviously the best group out of everybody so far. We'll see how that looks like as we get more safeties loaded into there. I think I'm up to 6 watched now. I just update the board periodically, so I'm trying to wait until I at least get to the next 100 and then do some rechecks before I get to my official top 100, my first official top 100 board. Like I said, I just want to feel more confident in the players I have there. I want to make sure I'm not missing any guys that do belong in the top 100. As I do this first release, trying to get it done this week as far as the top 100 goes. And then I'm going to try and release my first official top 100 by the end of the month. We can definitely talk through on this channel. I'll go through the top 100, just kind of highlight some guys that I'm looking at and show you kind of the system I have as far as predicting who's going to be available at my picks per my board. So we can kind of highlight those guys and keep an eye on them as the season wraps up as far as college football goes. But anyway, safety class looks good. Obviously anything above a 5 is a raw prospect with upside, but we're really looking for those 5.5s and up, because those are guys that we can see becoming eventual starters just with their tool sets they have and how their film looks. And you're not going to get too many guys in the 7+s. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if I have any. I think I might have one guy pushing for a 7, or maybe he already is a 7, but he's very fringe. That's that Pro Bowl caliber. Like, we're looking at this guy and he's looking to be a superstar at the next level. A lot of the guys that we're hoping to get, especially in these early rounds, are going to be in this 5.5 to just shy of 6 range, where you're going to be either an eventual starter, you see the upside, see the potential, have good tape, have good traits, or you're going to be an impact rookie starter, where I can see you coming in and being a day 1 guy on a team, and where you're going to get picked up and you're going to be a really significant contributor. And obviously, depending on the team and the position group in the NFL, some of these lower rated guys might be able to get those shots or get those runs. But overall, that's what we're looking for, is anything 5.5 to, that 7+, but 5.5 plus is really what we want. So keeping that in mind, we're looking at safeties, we're looking at linebackers, and then cornerbacks. That's really what we really like right now. 6 cornerbacks, 5 linebackers, 3 safeties. Obviously, probably just the top guys. Maybe those grades come down a little bit. But then if we look at those raw prospects with upsides, guys that we like, but maybe aren't as technically refined or ready to go day one. We're looking at this running back class. I think there's some really solid top end talent, but I think a lot of it is kind of just some middling talent where it's like, oh, that's a good running back, but don't really know how he's going to translate, or I like his game, but don't see how it can be effectively utilized in the NFL, or if he's a day one guy. Looking at this defensive interior again, really some really high end, top end talent for defensive interior and edge talent. But there are some guys that I think fall off, and I think it's really just a bulk of guys kind of in that developmental to raw prospect category where it's like, oh, like I see the upside. That's kind of how a lot of college football defensive linemen are. They're not necessarily technically refined and the most exact and precise with their moves or with their skill sets or with an expanded toolbox. It's usually you're an explosive athlete, or you have 1 or 2 moves that you really work down and you really have down and you're able to counter well, but you don't have everything put together yet. And that's why you kind of land in those categories. But that's totally fine. We're okay bringing in those guys in. And that's why, we're looking at defensive line, cornerback, linebacker, running back, and safety right now is kind of the guys we want to just swing on early. We like that talent in those groups, but also not opposed to grabbing some of these sleepers because we feel like there is good talent in those positions. So that's kind of how we're looking, how the class is shaping up right now for me through 80 players. Strong safety class. I've already watched a couple more since I got this board up to 80. Again, hoping to have 100 prospects, probably 100 plus done by the end of the week. And then hopefully by the end of the month, or, kind of the first episode in December, we can talk through my first, quote unquote, official top 100 board and some players that we're looking at as far as what my shadow team's looking to bring on and where those positions kind of lie. So maybe we'll sit on a couple players and hope they slide. And overall, that's where we're at. Looking for another good week of NFL action. Hoping to see some of these guys pan out. Obviously, we talked about some of the players on the team that we want to see do more, contribute more, whether that's snap count or production. I do keep an eye on Antonio Johnson every week out in Jacksonville, hoping to see him really step it up and have a big week that shows that upside again. I don't want him to just kind of be his average player that teeters off early in his career. I like to see him kind of get a resurgence, especially late in the year now. Go play for your job. You're on a team that's struggling right now, that's looking to turn over a lot of pieces. So don't be one of those pieces. Find a way to stay on that team and really contribute. But if you do kind of get moved on from, then hopefully you're able to find a better situation. But that's all we have this week. Thanks for watching.